When the badge of justice meets the reality of bias, which one prevails? A decorated FBI agent finds himself at the crossroads of two Americas, when a family vacation transforms into a stark reminder that no badge can fully shield against racial prejudice. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, Marcus Williams, father, husband, and veteran federal agent, faces down the barrel of local police prejudice, proving that even those who uphold the law aren't immune to its misuse. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Springfield's exclusive Oak Hill neighborhood, where century-old maple trees lined streets named after presidents and poets. Marcus Williams navigated his 2024 Mercedes GLS with the practiced ease of someone used to both luxury vehicles and careful driving. The leather seat still carried that new car scent. He'd purchased it just 3 months ago to celebrate his promotion to supervisory special agent at the FBI's Boston field office. In the passenger seat, Angela Williams scrolled through the Airbnb listing on her phone, her other hand absently twisting one of her locks. 742 Madison Avenue, she murmured, squinting at the screen. It should be just past this intersection. A successful pediatrician with her own practice in Boston, Angela had spent weeks planning this summer getaway, determined to give their family a break from their demanding schedules. From the back seat, 16-year-old Zara looked up from her phone long enough to roll her eyes at her father's familiar commentary about the neighborhood. "Dad, you literally said the exact same thing when we visited Uncle James in Bethesda last year." Her voice carried that particular teenage blend of affection and exasperation. Zara had inherited her mother's sharp wit and her father's keen observational skills, a combination that made her both a gifted debate team captain and occasionally challenging daughter. 12-year-old Marcus Jr., MJ to the family, pressed his face against the window, his round glasses slightly fogging from his excited breathing. "Look at that water park! The slides are huge!" His Nintendo Switch lay forgotten in his lap, the first time he'd put it down since they'd started the 3-hour drive from Boston. "Can we go right after we unpack, please?" His enthusiasm made both parents smile. MJ's passion for science usually kept him quiet and focused, but moments like these reminded them he was still very much a kid. Marcus checked the rearview mirror, a habit ingrained from both his FBI training and 18 years of fatherhood. The street behind them was clear except for a police cruiser that had just turned onto Madison Avenue. Something in Marcus's gut tightened. Another habit, this one born from a lifetime of being black in America, reinforced by countless cases he'd investigated over his career. When the cruiser's lights began flashing, Marcus felt Angela tense beside him. He'd already checked his speed, 23 in a 25 zone. His registration and insurance were current. The windows were legally tinted, and all lights were functioning. He checked everything before leaving Boston, as he always did before any family trip. "Marcus." Angela's voice held a question and a warning. She'd been through this before, both as a child with her own father, and now as a wife and mother. Her hand moved instinctively toward her phone. "It's okay," Marcus said, his voice carrying the calm authority that had diffused countless tense situations throughout his career. He signaled and pulled over smoothly, positioning the Mercedes perfectly, not too close to the curb to appear nervous, not too far to seem uncooperative. "Everyone stay calm and keep your hands where they can be seen. Zara, wake up your brother." MJ had dozed off, his excitement finally overtaken by the motion of the car. Zara gently shook him awake, whispering instructions they'd all hoped they'd never need to use. The boy's eyes widened behind his glasses as he registered the red and blue lights reflecting off the windows. Marcus watched in the side mirror as 2 officers approached, one on each side of the vehicle. His trained eye noted details automatically. The older officer on the driver's side had his hand resting on his holstered weapon, while the younger Asian officer on the passenger side maintained a wider stance than standard protocol dictated. Both suggested heightened tension before any interaction had even begun. As Officer Reynolds approached, his aggressive command to keep their hands visible shattered the last remnants of their vacation mood. Marcus's hands remained steady on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, but his mind was already racing through scenarios, protocols, and procedures. Not as an FBI agent this time, but as a black father trying to keep his family safe during what should have been the start of their vacation. The moment Marcus's hand moved toward his breast pocket, Officer Reynolds's reaction was immediate and extreme. The metallic sound of his weapon clearing its holster seemed to echo through the quiet suburban street. "Don't move! Hands on the wheel!" Reynolds barked, his voice carrying an edge of adrenaline that made Marcus's FBI-trained mind recognize an officer operating on fear rather than protocol. Inside the vehicle, Angela's doctor's instincts kicked in as she assessed her children's stress responses. Zara had gone completely still, her phone forgotten in her lap, her hands trembling slightly as they rested on her thighs. MJ's breathing had become rapid and shallow, the beginning of a panic attack similar to what she'd seen in her young patients. She wanted desperately to reach back and comfort them, but years of hearing Marcus's work stories and their own family discussions about police interactions kept her hands visible on the dashboard. "Officer," Marcus spoke with the measured calm he used during hostage negotiations. "I am FBI Supervisory Special Agent Marcus Williams from the Boston Field Office. My credentials are in my breast pocket. I'm going to move very slowly to retrieve them." He emphasized each word carefully, maintaining eye contact with Reynolds through the side mirror. 20 years of law enforcement experience had taught him that these next few seconds were crucial. Officer Chen, the younger officer on the passenger side, shifted his weight nervously, his eyes darting between his partner and the family in the car. His hand hadn't moved to his weapon, but his posture betrayed his uncertainty. Through the window, he could see the family's luggage in the back, the children's electronic devices, Angela's medical journal on the console. All the normal trappings of a family vacation that somehow hadn't registered during their initial approach. The crackle of Officer Reynolds's radio cut through the tension as he called for backup. "Dispatch, requesting additional units at 742 Madison. Subjects claiming federal law enforcement status. Proceeding with caution." The coded message sent a surge of frustration through Marcus. Claiming status. Subjects, instead of civilians or family. Language choices that painted them as suspicious, despite zero evidence of wrongdoing. 2 more patrol cars arrived within minutes, their sirens splitting the suburban quiet. The neighbors had begun to emerge from their homes, standing in small clusters on their perfectly manicured lawns. Angela noticed an older white couple filming with their phones, while a black family across the street watched with all too familiar concern. She made eye contact with the mother across the street, seeing her own fear and anger reflected back. If this story resonated with you and you believe in the power of change, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join us as we share more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and drive us toward a better tomorrow. Let's keep the conversation going. Sergeant James Morrison's arrival marked a turning point. His unmarked car pulled up smoothly, and he emerged with the confident authority of his rank. At 53, Morrison had worked his way up through the department over 3 decades, and the silver in his short-cropped hair spoke to years of dealing with situations exactly like this one. He took in the scene with experienced eyes. The drawn weapon, the frightened family, the gathering crowd. "Reynolds, report." Morrison's command carried a weight that immediately shifted the dynamic. As Reynolds began to explain about suspicious activity reports, Morrison's expression darkened. He'd seen the department's dispatch logs. There had been no such reports that day. The tension reached its peak when Morrison ordered Reynolds to holster his weapon. For a moment, Reynolds hesitated, his training warring with his pride. "Sir, departmental protocol for suspicious," he began, but Morrison cut him off with a sharp gesture. "The only suspicious activity I'm seeing right now is from our side of the badge, Officer Reynolds." Morrison's voice was level but carried an unmistakable edge. "Now holster your weapon and step back." The gathered neighbors had grown silent enough to hear the command, and Angela noticed several more phones recording the scene. As Reynolds finally lowered his weapon, MJ let out a shuddering breath that nearly broke Marcus's professional composure. Zara had tears streaming down her face, though she remained silent, her hand now gripping her brother's tightly. Angela wanted to scream, to rage at the officers who had traumatized her children, but her voice emerged steady and clear. "Our children just watched their father have a gun drawn on him for being black in the wrong neighborhood. I want every one of your badge numbers. And this will not end here. Morrison approached Marcus's window, his manner deliberately casual to help de-escalate the situation. Sir, I apologize for my officer's conduct. Please retrieve your credentials now. As Marcus slowly reached for his ID, Morrison turned to address the gathering crowd, silently signaling to the other officers to begin dispersing the onlookers. The sight of Marcus's FBI credentials finally shattered the remaining pretense of this being a legitimate stop. Reynolds's face had gone pale, while Chen looked physically ill. Morrison examined the credentials carefully, standard procedure, even though he had already read the situation correctly, before handing them back with professional courtesy. Agent Williams, Morrison said loud enough for all to hear. On behalf of the Springfield Police Department, you have my sincerest apologies. I would appreciate if you and your family would accompany me to the station to file a formal report. Chief Roberts will want to address this personally. His eyes met Marcus's, conveying a clear message. This wouldn't be swept under the rug. The police station's conference room felt both too large and too small, as the Williams family sat across from Chief Roberts and Sergeant Morrison. The wall clock ticked past 7 p.m., marking 4 hours since their intended vacation check-in time. Their luggage still sat in their Mercedes, a reminder of how quickly a planned family getaway had transformed into something far more significant. Chief Roberts, a man whose 35 years on the force showed in the deep lines around his eyes, placed his reading glasses on the polished conference table. He had just finished reviewing the preliminary incident report, dashcam footage, and body camera recordings. The footage had been especially damning. The fear in MJ's voice, Zara's silent tears, Angela's controlled anger, and Marcus's extraordinary composure in the face of unwarranted aggression. Agent Williams, Roberts began, his voice carrying the weight of institutional responsibility. Dr. Williams, what happened today represents a fundamental failure of training, judgment, and basic human decency. He paused, looking directly at MJ, who sat between his parents, still occasionally trembling. Young man, your father is right about police officers being here to protect people. What happened today was wrong, and I want you to know that. Angela leaned forward, her professional demeanor as a pediatrician giving way to maternal fury. Chief Roberts, my son just witnessed his father, an FBI agent who has dedicated his life to law enforcement, being treated like a criminal. My daughter watched an officer draw a weapon on her father for reaching for his credentials. Do you understand what that does to children? To their sense of safety? To their trust in authority? Zara, who had remained quiet since their arrival at the station, suddenly spoke up. I film TikToks about social justice, about what it means to be young and black in America. I always try to be balanced, to show both sides. But how am I supposed to do that now? How do I tell my followers that the system works when my own FBI agent father isn't even safe from it? The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Sergeant Morrison, who had positioned himself near the door, shifted uncomfortably. He had spent decades trying to change the system from within, and Zara's words cut straight to the heart of that struggle. Marcus reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand before addressing the chief. This isn't about me, Chief. This is about every black person who doesn't have a badge to protect them. It's about every parent who has to have the talk with their children about surviving police encounters. Officer Reynolds didn't see an FBI agent today. He saw a black man in an expensive car in a white neighborhood. That's the reality we need to address. Chief Roberts nodded slowly, pulling a folder from his briefcase. I have here Officer Reynolds' disciplinary record. There have been 3 other complaints of racial profiling in the past 18 months, all dismissed due to insufficient evidence. He met Marcus's gaze. That ends today. He's been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. That's a start, Angela said, her voice firm. But suspension isn't enough. What about systemic change? What about ensuring this doesn't happen to another family? Marcus leaned forward, years of FBI training in community relations coming to the forefront. Chief, I'd like to propose something constructive. Give me 2 hours with your officers. Not just Reynolds and Chen, but the entire department. Let me share both sides of the badge perspective. Let me show them what it means to be both a law enforcement officer and a black man in America. Sergeant Morrison stepped forward from his position by the door. I'd like to co-facilitate that training, if you're willing, Agent Williams. Our officers need to hear this from both inside and outside perspectives. MJ, who had been quiet for most of the meeting, suddenly spoke up. Dad? Could I say something to the officers too? About how it felt? Maybe if they hear it from a kid? His voice trailed off, but the impact of his request was profound. Angela wrapped an arm around her son, fighting back tears at his courage. Chief Roberts removed his glasses again, cleaning them thoughtfully. Agent Williams, Dr. Williams, I accept your proposal, but I'd like to take it further. Springfield PD needs more than just a one-time training session. We need ongoing community dialogue, regular bias awareness programs, and structural changes to our training and oversight procedures. He looked at MJ and Zara. And yes, young man, we need to hear voices like yours. All voices. Zara pulled out her phone, her hands steady now. Chief Roberts, would you be willing to go on record about these changes? My social media followers need to see that accountability is possible. That change can happen, even if it starts from something painful. The next hour was spent outlining a comprehensive reform program. Monthly community forums, revised training protocols, expanded bias awareness education, and a new civilian oversight committee. Marcus would lead the first training session the following week, and Angela would help establish a youth police dialogue program. As they finally left the station that evening, the summer sun was setting over Springfield. Their vacation plans had been thoroughly derailed, but something more important had taken shape. Marcus looked at his family, Angela's determined expression, Zara already drafting a thoughtful social media post about the day's events, and MJ walking taller, despite his lingering anxiety. You know, Marcus said as they walked to their car, sometimes the most important journeys aren't the ones we plan. He hugged his family close, feeling their collective strength. What we did in there today. That's how real change begins. One honest conversation, one brave voice, one moment of accountability at a time. As they drove toward their rental house in the gathering dusk, Zara's phone pinged with notifications. Her initial post about the incident was already going viral. But more importantly, MJ had fallen asleep on his sister's shoulder, finally feeling safe enough to rest. Angela reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand, their shared glance speaking volumes about love, resilience, and the ongoing work of making the world better for their children.